All right. Storytelling 292, myths. And the myth that I will attempt to tell is the myth of Apollo and Daphne. Imagine with me. Imagine a society. Imagine a culture that was influenced directly by the gods, where a breeze blowing through the trees could be understood as the sigh or the breath of a god, or even the word of a god, where mountains, streams, bodies of water, mountains, everything had meaning and spirit. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was ancient Greece, a society where these stories were not entertainment. No. These stories explained. These stories gave meaning to the world and gave answers to the questions that they were seeking, and gave them answers to why the world was the way it was. It covered everything from politics to social ideas, social things, love, marriage, all the way down to the simple things of life, even things like talent and inability, victory and defeat, and yes, even love and loss. But before we continue this story, I want you to envision yourself in a large open amphitheater. It's nighttime, and you're listening to these words, you're listening to these stories, and I want you to think and imagine and wonder if the gods are listening to us right now. That they're seeing every thought, listening to every word, waiting for our reaction. Will we believe them, or will we laugh at them? Because I guarantee you, when you hear this story, it will change the way that you look at your life. It will change the way that you look at this world, and it will change the way you look at this life and the way that you look at love itself. But this story begins before Apollo even met Daphne, before the chase, before the legend. Picture this: a monstrous serpent, Python, was destroying cities, destroying communities, destroying houses, destroying sacred temples, taunting the gods. Stop me if you can. Do something, I dare you. I dare you to stop me. And there was one god that would. It was Apollo. He confronted Python, and with his bow ready, his arrow nocked, his muscles tensed, he shot arrow after arrow into Python, and finally defeating him. And when he defeated him, the people loved him. The people praised him. They honored him with rituals and festivals, and they praised him. And Apollo allowed that praise to get into his heart and get into his mind, and he became arrogant. But the mischievous god of love, Eros, was in the clouds watching the arrogance of Apollo, even watching Apollo mock him by saying, "Who are you, you small god? You can't move humanity the way I can. You can't make music like I can. You can't move the souls of humanity like I can with your small bow and your tiny little arrows. You can't do what I can do." And that's when Eros began to make his plan. What Eros did at that moment was he fashioned two arrows, one made of gold and one made of lead. The golden arrow, to whoever it struck, would inflame passion, inflame love to the next person they saw. And conversely, the arrow of lead would turn somebody's heart cold, indifferent, as if two hands frozen wrapped themselves around the heart of the one it was struck. And so Eros continued with his plan. He made the paths of Apollo and Daphne cross. And when he did, he shot those arrows, the one of gold into Apollo and the one of lead into Daphne. And so the stage was set that the biggest game of love, the most important game of love, was about to be played. But as we talk about love, as we talk about feelings and emotions, I want to bring you back to the time you fell in love. I want to bring you back to the time where the world stood still. Time stood still. The moment you saw them, where the flames of desire rose in you. You remember, don't you? You remember when you saw them, you couldn't breathe, you gasped for air, and something in your heart ached. You wanted to be with them, and when you were with them, it was wonderful, joy, happiness. And when they were gone away from you, all you could do was think about the next time you would see them again. But while they were gone, you were haunted by something. Perhaps it was a scent of perfume or an article of clothing that haunted you. Tell me you remember. Tell me you remember. Tell me you remember that time, that moment where you thought to yourself, this is why I was born. A love so great. And that's exactly what happened to Apollo. When he was struck by that arrow, he found that love, the same love we just talked about. And when he did, he fell hopelessly. He was helplessly, truly, madly, deeply in love when he saw Daphne in the forest, in the meadow. It was at daybreak. The morning was just beginning and the sun was just starting to rise over the mountains and warm everything. The ground was beginning to warm. The rays of light were beaming through the branches of the trees and into the forest, and every flower, every blade of grass, every leaf bowed to it as if it was divine. It was that morning that Daphne walked into the meadow. It was that morning that Apollo saw her for the first time and felt all those things we just talked about. He saw her in the meadow. Her skin glowed. It didn't shine, it glowed. Her hair, it didn't shine, it blazed. And her smile, her smile. I mean, what could anything compare to? This was the God. This was a God whose music, whose poetry could move the soul of humans. It could hypnotize the hearts of men. It could soften the hearts of women. I mean, what was Olympus compared to her perfection, compared to every perfect curve, to every perfect, exquisite part of her body? He worshiped her. What was Olympus compared to that? Compared to the eyes that pierced right through him and saw him for the very first time. Apollo was moved. He was moved so much that without even thinking, he was moving towards her. He couldn't understand it. And when she saw that, when Daphne saw that, she remembered she served Artemis, the goddess, the huntress. And to be a servant of Artemis was one to be chaste, one to be unknown to man, to be pure. And Apollo raced after her, and she fled. She ran through the forest. She knew she could not be caught by him, but he continued. He persisted, chasing her. She could hear his footsteps behind her. She could feel each grasp as he reached out for her. He could feel the air from his hands. And as she was running, she was pleading to her father, Phineas, the river god, Father, Father, please save me, do something. And her father, the river god, Phineas, he heard her. He heard her and he granted her wish. And what he did was he transformed her into a beautiful laurel tree. And it was at that moment that Apollo reached one last time, thinking that he had her in his arms. I've got her, I've got her, I've got her. When all of a sudden, when he reached, all he could find in his hands were branches, leaves, and bark. And it was at that moment that he realized he would never have her. He would never get a chance to touch her, to talk to her, to be with her. And he knelt down at the base of the tree and he prayed and he cried out, "Why? Why? Everything was so perfect. I love you. Why don't you love me?" But then the wind, it blew through the laurel leaves. And he could swear that he heard them say, "I don't know. I don't know." And so now, I want you to think back on your life. Think of a time where your team was the better team on the field. You outplayed the other team, but for some reason, you lost. Or in one-on-one competition, you were the better athlete. You were faster, you were quicker, you were better, you were better skilled, but still, you lost. And I want you to think back to a time where you loved someone deeply. Everything was perfect, but you couldn't understand why they didn't love you. What I want you to do is be still and be quiet and listen to the laurel leaves. I want you to listen, and perhaps they're saying to you the same thing they said to Apollo. I don't know. I don't know.